Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Om Ganyatimrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarane Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Beevyacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Good morning, dear devotees. Welcome to morning class at the Bhakti Center. It is a real pleasure and a true privilege to be back with you. And I seek all of your blessings, especially from our senior devotees in our community, especially those who might be watching on YouTube. Please bless me so that I may speak something in line with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. I can't see all the screen right now, but my own Gurudev, His Grace Madan Gopal, may be on this call. And so I especially seek your blessings, Gurudev. If I say anything of any value, it's your mercy, and the mistakes and fumblings are squarely my own. So I know my Gurudev is just back from a very successful preaching tour in San Diego, so he might be on San Diego time. Anyway, welcome to everybody. Today is another very auspicious day. We are honoring the disappearance day of Ramanujacharya. And Ramanujacharya is one of the great Vaishnav acharyas or teachers who gave our lineage so many of the foundational, fundamental concepts and constructs that we employ every day. He's really, you can view him as like the root of Krishna consciousness. So we honor him today. Ramanujacharya revolutionized bhakti or devotional service by making it philosophically respectable. Before Ramanujacharya, many people thought that this was just sort of an emotional worship and that it was inferior for simple people, who couldn't understand the complex philosophy. But he boldly said no, that loving God with your heart is the highest path. And he built this serious theology around devotional practice. So he elevated bhakti into serious theology. He established concepts like the supreme personality of Godhead. God has a personality. God is full of all the opulences, that this construct that we know today, and that this is what allows us to love him. He introduces surrender to God as a key to liberation. So really these central, tenets of Krishna consciousness come from Ramanujacharya. He centered temple worship of deities, home worship, devotional singing, continuous loving focus and on and praise of God through his names and forms, continuously dwelling on God's perfection. So really, again, he gave us the root of Krishna consciousness. So today, what I would like to talk about is the philosophy of Ramanujacharya, and to put his philosophy in the context with other acharyas in our lineage and those that came before him. And why are we doing this? Is so that we can better appreciate the matchless gifts that Srila Prabhupada gave us. This is not philosophy for philosophy's sake. This is to really appreciate that Prabhupada gave us the complete and perfect philosophy that helps orient us and guides us on our journey home back to Krishna. And that's the purpose. So if I could have the ability to share my screen, that would be nice. And in general, hang on a second.
You should be able to.
Okay, great.
Now.
Oh my goodness, am I out of the screen here? So let me just share my screen. Okay. Okay, hopefully you're seeing my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So before we do anything in general, we should always ground ourselves in Srila Prabhupada's words. What did Srila Prabhupada have to say about any endeavor that we're embarking on? And when it comes to philosophy, this is a very famous quote of Prabhupada's. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. That religion without philosophy is sentiment or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So let's think about, again, because we're going to talk about philosophy today. So religion without philosophy is sentiment. So if you think about our movement, if you thought about if we didn't have any philosophy, if we were just dancing around with tilak on our head saying, I love Krishna, you couldn't really explain it to anybody. Why do you love Krishna? Who is Krishna? What does this mean? You need to have philosophy in order to be grounded yourself and understand what you're doing. And rather than it just be a feeling, and you have to have it in order to teach and preach to others. And why sometimes it can veer into fanaticism is that if you don't have the grounding of philosophy, it can very easily become us versus them, right? It can lead towards this kind of fanaticism. And, philosophy has been used to underpin us versus them. But in general, if you really understand philosophy, it tends to be unifying and it tends to be illuminating. To see the nature of shared goals. So the second part of this, philosophy without religion, is mental speculation. So if you just have philosophy and you don't have religion, Prabhupada would often talk about dry speculation, right? We are not learning this philosophy so we can impress others, we can use big words, mental gymnastics, just to compare things for comparison's sake. It's really geared to bring us closer to Krishna. And the last thing that Prabhupada says about philosophy is that don't get lost in the maze of philosophy. And if it's not for you, do your best and just chant. Philosophy supports chanting. Chanting is really still the most important thing. So I think we shouldn't be afraid of philosophy. We should roll up our sleeves and really dive in, which is what we're going to do today. So we're going to situate, here's Ramanujacharya down on the bottom of the screen here. We're going to look quickly at the 4 Vaishnav Sampradayas, and Vasudev brilliantly spoke about this yesterday. So for those of you who are new, Vaishnav just means the worshippers of Vishnu or Krishna, aka Krishna. And that's important to remember, that everything comes from Krishna. When I said that Ramanujacharya sort of, invented these things or brought us these things, all of these things ultimately come from Krishna. So Sampradaya, I think most of us know that means like a school of thought. And if you break down the word Sampradaya, it's sam, which means whole or complete, especially what is very good. Pra means forward. Da means give. So it means something that you're giving forward that is good and complete. And this is really important. If you've ever played the game of telephone, you get maybe 10, 12 people in a circle, you whisper something in someone's ear, they whisper it to the next person, it goes all the way around. Even with 10, 12 people, you could start with like, vanilla ice cream is my favorite. And the last person, when it comes back and they say it out loud, your brother is nuts. It's amazing every time how it's completely quite different. And so you can imagine with this very complex philosophy coming down over thousands and thousands of years, that these sampradayas are so critical in that they're delivering us complete the wisdom and the knowledge coming directly from Krishna. So the 4 Vaishnava sampradayas are the Brahma sampradaya. This is where we are. And each sampradaya, these are not presiding deities. We shouldn't think of Brahma as our presiding deities. These are really, as Vasudeva was saying, the first link in the chain. These were the first people that Krishna said, this is the truth. So and each sampradaya has a sort of first link in the chain, and each one has a great acharya. So as we learned yesterday, we're in the Brahma sampradaya, and Madhvacharya is our acharya, and we heard about his disappearance day yesterday from Vasudev. Lord Chaitanya is also notably in our sampradaya, and he is the great disruptor. He's disrupting the symmetry of this chart. But he is so important that we're going to talk about what he brings to our sampradaya. So our cousins here are the Shri Sampradaya. Their link is Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune, and their great acharya is Ramanujacharya. And we're going to be talking about to him today. So you can kind of view him as our cousin. There's the Rudra Sampradaya, or sometimes called the Shiva Sampradaya, which has Vishnu Swami as the great acharya. And then lastly, of the four bona fide Vaishnava Sampradayas, Kumara Sampradaya, the four Kumaras, with Nimbarkacharya, that's sometimes also called the Nimbarkacharya Sampradaya. So this is kind of where we are. So we are going to be talking about the philosophy of Ramanujacharya over here, who's we're celebrating today, in relationship to Madhvacharya, our great acharya, as well as Lord Chaitanya, the Lord himself, who is in our lineage, as well as some of the acharyas that came outside of our lineage. So again, all to understand ourselves better and what we're talking about and what we're doing. So when we talk about philosophy, we're really talking about tattva. And this is a Sanskrit word that means thatness, tat meaning that, va meaning ness. So thatness, right? What the whatness? What is thatness? Like, how would you define thatness? So we can think about thatness as we would think about the words like softness, right? Like if a blanket has softness, it has the quality of being soft. Or if I were to turn off all the lights, the room would fall into darkness, and the room would have the quality of being dark. Tattva is having the quality of being that. So what does that mean? It means it's something that you can point to. If you can point to something, it's a that. If you can point something physical like a dog or a man or a tree, it's a that, right? And even metaphysical things like a philosophy, a religion, a country, a concept, those are also things that you can point to. So if you can point to something and say that, it has the quality of being, it has the quality of existing, it has the quality of being something. And so tattva is the beingness of something, or the existence of something, or how something is. And all of the great acharyas have a tattva, meaning that they are explaining, like, what is the thatness of reality? How is reality? What is the nature of reality? What is the nature of everything we see? What is our place in it? And what is the underlying construct? So that's tattva. So we're going to look at the tattvas um, of starting here to reorient ourselves. Here's Ramanujacharya, who we're celebrating today, his disappearance day. Madhvacharya, you can see in time, he comes after him. He's in our lineage, as we described, and Lord Chaitanya is in our lineage. But what we want to talk about first is who came before our lineage, and and what did they think? Kind of what were we pushing back against? And it doesn't take long when you read any of Prabhupada's books for the first time that you quickly think, who are these impersonalists? Who are these Mayavadis that Prabhupada just keeps like hammering and nailing page after page? Who are they? So they you kind of get the feeling like they're bad guys, right? But they're not actually bad guys. They start with Lord Buddha, and certainly Lord Buddha was no bad guy. We know actually he was an expansion of Krishna that came to actually preach to the atheists. So Lord Buddha, 4 centuries BCE, 4 centuries before the advent of Christ, is the common era. His tattva, like how he explained reality, was that all of reality is emptiness or voidness, shunyata. emptiness or voidness. And what he meant by that is that if we look at reality, we can see, and again, many of these threads come down into our philosophy, but we take it in a totally different direction, that reality um, is it is not a place to find happiness. In fact, reality is a place of suffering. And that the reason that we're suffering is because we're attached to things. So these concepts sound familiar to us. And that in order to stop suffering, we need to not be attached to things. And we need to purify ourselves through right words and right language and a right livelihood. All these things sound familiar, but then we go inside of ourselves through concentration and meditation. And through deep, deep meditation, what we'll see is that we are no different than anything else. And so that all of these distinctions, all of these dog, man, country, religion, all of these distinctions are illusion based on our ignorance. They are the influence of Maya. So that's why they're called Mayavadis, right? So this impersonal philosophy that was atheist, it was rational, it threw away the Vedas. It said, don't worry about the Vedas, because at this time the Vedas had become quite corrupt and the priests had become corrupt, just like Jesus 4,000 years later, excuse me, 400 years later, would, find the money changers in the temple. Everything had become very corrupt. And so Buddha said, throw that aside. Don't even look at the Vedas. And especially with regards to animal slaughter, that the Vedas were being used to justify mass animal slaughter. So a very radical reformer, Lord Buddha said, throw that all out. These and that God is not there isn't, don't worry about God, basically, is what he said. And there was no focus on God. God was not in the picture. You have everything you need. If you go inside, you will see what you need to see. So this impersonal view of God and this Mayavadi philosophy took root in India, and it held as sort of like the intellectual currency for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. You can see that it's not almost like, over 1,000 years later, that Shankaracharya is the first person who kind of takes a step, just takes a tiny step outside of this construct. And what does he do? He introduces Advaita, Dva meaning two, and A meaning not. So not non-dualism, meaning that he sees tattva, he sees all of reality as one. So he is, because he's using the intellectual currency of the day of the Buddhists to kind of fight a little bit against them. Because if you said anything different, people wouldn't listen to you. So he uses those terms in that construct, but he does something very important. He brings back the Vedas. He said we get these conceptions of oneness, of Brahman, of that sort of unifying consciousness and reality from the Vedas. So he brings back the Vedas and he says that those are important. And he talks about God, but it's Brahman, right? And it's featureless and it's qualityness, and it's this kind of big amorphous mass of which we are part of, right? There's no distinction between us and God at a fundamental level. We are all one. We are all Brahman, this nameless, formless whole. So he takes a little bit of a step, but we're still very much in this impersonal construct. So this brings us to Ramanujacharya, who's the focus of today, right? So this is 300 years about after Shankaracharya. Ramanujacharya, I cannot describe how radical of a revolutionary Ramanujacharya is. He basically busts down the impersonal construct and says, there is a God. God is personal. God has qualities. God has all good qualities. God has all excellences. We are separate from God, and therefore we can worship God. And, you kind of, if you try to think like, what's the equivalent move in our society today? I was trying to think, what would be the equivalent thing? And it's not quite that, because it's not as extreme, but you could imagine if you went to a faculty cocktail party, okay, at an Ivy League school today. You went to a faculty cocktail party and you started saying to people, I don't believe in evolution. Evolution is nonsense. God created everything. We didn't evolve from monkeys. God created monkeys, God created man, and God created everything. The needle on the record player would kind of stop. Like there was an exhibit at the Museum of Natural History a couple of years ago that some Christians were protesting, and the sort of the intelligentsia of New York sort of looked at them like, who are these Bible thumping fools talking about God? There was such a prevalence of this impersonalism in society that he just radically smashed through it. And how did he radically smash through it? A lot like Prabhupada smashes through things with logic. So here's just one example of the logic that he uses. He says, okay, so if there are individuals, if you're saying in the impersonalist world that individualism is just illusion, right? That there is no such thing as an individual, it's all illusion, then who is it who is experiencing the illusion? you know Somebody has to be experiencing the illusion. And so the fact that individuals presuppose the illusion is this logic that just smashes through this construct. And it threatens society. There were actually multiple threats on his life because he just so quickly smashed through all of the constructs of his day and brings back the Vedas and brings back God. So we thank Ramanujacharya for bringing back this personal conception of God. So coming back to our lineage just quickly, Madhvacharya, he introduces what Vasudev spoke about yesterday as Shuddhadvaita, meaning pure dualism. So in our lineage, this concept goes even further, gets pushed even further to say that God and the individual are two, right? That they are never one. They are always eternally two. Ramanujacharya thought that we were distinct from God, but we were still one with him. We were like his limbs. We were modes of God. We were part of him. But no, Madhvacharya in our lineage says absolutely not. We are eternally and always two. And we hear Prabhupada echoing that a lot. So he brought pure dualism to the table. This is our lineage. And then lastly, Lord Chaitanya. Again, these are the essences of these philosophies. Lord Chaitanya is God himself. And so he is able to kind of synthesize everything in the most brilliant way into something that we know is called achintya bheda bheda, meaning inconceivable oneness and difference. So what Lord Chaitanya is saying of all of the above, he is saying, yes, we are one with God. And God does have qualities, and God is a person, and we must worship God. But he also says that we are simultaneously eternally different and distinct. And that this is achintya. This cannot be understood through thinking. This can only be understood through love or devotion. And if you have ever experienced, I would wager in the mundane world, if you have ever been so in love with somebody that you feel the borders between you and them dissolving, and you really feel like you're one with that person, but you always know that you are still a distinct person, that maybe is a taste of achintya bheda bheda. It's certainly not something that is experienced conceptually or philosophically. It's something that is experienced through love. So we see this kind of dissent and pushing back against impersonalism and bringing personalism into the fold um, that we can thank Ramanujacharya for. So, um, so kind of summarizing here the different philosophies. So, when it comes to reality, like we were talking about, that Advaita or Sankaracharya, he says that it's one and it doesn't have any attributes, right? And then Sankaracharya, uh, excuse me, Ramanujacharya says, no, everything is one, but it has qualities. And then we move to our Acharya, um, sorry, uh, Madhvacharya, my apologies. He says, no, we're two eternally, right? And then Lord Chaitanya says, no, we're one and two, and it's this kind of paradox. And so again, going down the chain where Advaita says the world is unreal, that ad, um, I should have written these down this way, that Ramanujacharya says that we're actually part of God's body, and that we are separate eternally, whereas Achintya Bheda Bheda says that we're actually God's energy, which is a really nice distinction, right? So that means that like we kind of are part of God, but we're separate from God, but we are his energy. So again, with the soul, whereas Advaita thinks that we're identical with God, Ramanuja Charya says that we are a mode of God. Our Acharya says that we are sort of distinct from God, and Chinta Beta Beta says that we're a distinct energy of God. So when it comes to difference, we can see that where Advaita thinks that difference is an illusion, Ramanuja Acharya thinks that we are actually that difference is there, but it's qualified, it has qualities, versus thinking that it's absolute, or in Achintya Beta Beta that it's eternal. And I see I'm also running out of time, so I'm going to move on from this. So going back to our lineage, it starts with Lord Krishna, and as we said, it goes from Lord Brahma. And as we learned yesterday from Vasudev, Madhvacharya, our Acharya, gives us the name the Brahma Madhva Sampradaya. And Lord Chaitanya, he is God himself, but he chooses to be part of our Sampradaya, which gives us this tremendous infusion of synthesis and unification of all of the thinking that comes before us. And so what he actually says here to Jiva Goswami, he says that he actually takes something from each of these sampradayas. So he says from Madhva, I will take two essential teachings. Again, this is Lord Chaitanya speaking. From Madhva, I will take two essential teachings: his complete rejection and defeat of the Mayavadi philosophy, which I hope that we walked through, and his service to the deity of Krishna, accepting him as an eternal spiritual personality. So that's what Lord Chaitanya takes from Madhva. From Ramanuja, who we're celebrating today, I will accept two teachings: the concept of devotional service, unpolluted by karma and jnana, and service to the devotees. So these are the main things that Lord Chaitanya sees Ramanuja bringing. From Vishnu Swami's teaching, again in the Vishnu Sampradaya, I will accept two elements: the sentiment of exclusive dependence on Krishna and the path of Raga Marga, or spontaneous devotion. And lastly, from Nimbarka, I will take two very important principles: the necessity of taking shelter of Srimati Radharani and the high esteem of the gopis' love for Krishna. So you can see that what the advantage of our Sampradaya is that it synthesizes everything, takes something from everything, and
Venu, Madhuri, did she freeze or is it just me?
No, we can't hear her anymore.
Okay.
Venu, Madhuri, check one, check two. Where are you?
did you say something?
We just didn't hear that last part. You froze.
Oh, I froze. Okay, so I said we started, now we're ending with Srila Prabhupada. This is a letter. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. This is a letter from Srila Prabhupada that he wrote in 1974. So far as I'm personally concerned, following the footsteps of my Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur Prabhupada, we accept the principles of all the acharyas, although officially we belong to the Madhva Sampradaya. Our Sampradaya is known as the Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. We find great shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Ramanujacharya because his lotus feet are the strongest fort to combat the Mayavadi philosophy. So basically what Srila Prabhupada is saying is that even though Ramanujacharya isn't exactly in our Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya lineage, he was the first one that really pushed back against impersonalism and broke through the darkness of impersonalism to bring a personal conception of God to us, which comes down to us today. I will just conclude by personally saying I spent time practicing Buddhism, and I can say that it truly, without Krishna, without a personal view of God, reality is cold. Reality is empty. And that we really should be so grateful every day for this personal conception of God, this personal understanding and access through bhakti to Krishna that just brings so much richness and completeness to us, not just philosophically, but in our hearts. So I will pause there after some significant fumbling. I apologize. But thank you for bearing with me. This is challenging territory, but I do think it's important that we try to tackle the philosophy, even if we stumble, because it was important to Prabhupada. It's important to keep our movement strong. So I wanted to share it with you today. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Venu Madhuri. A question. So he pushed back against impersonalism. And so what are the dangers, if any, of impersonalism? Why is it such a big deal that we have to push against it? Why can't we just bring sweetness and promote Vaishnavism and leave Mayavadis alone and let them practice what they're practicing? Why do we have to refute and push back against that? What are the dangers of impersonalism? What's one? It's aspect of Krishna. Why do we have to push back against it?
I think we have to push back against it. I'll say first of all, because it is so compelling to so many people, myself being one of them, that if you that this kind of rationalistic, atheistic view of kind of everything is one is very alluring and compelling to get your to follow. And so I think we don't we if unless we push back, then people could kind of go down that path. You know what I mean? I think it's out of compassion to others ultimately that we want to push back on it, because we want them to have access to the complete truth, the absolute truth, which includes Bhagavan, right? It includes the personality of God. So I would say out of compassion. I would also say that we have to understand the historic context. And I think for a lot of us in the West, Prabhupada kind of drops out of the sky, right, with these books. And we don't have the whole history and the whole kind of Vedic culture and background of understanding that how prevalent this philosophy was. Like I can only think of something like this is kind of a terrible example, but like slavery in this country. You know what I mean? That people who never experienced that may not know like what a grip that had. Like people thought that was okay. You know, that like even people like all across the country just thought like, made sense of it and thought it was okay. And again, I'm not trying to equate slavery with impersonalism, but more to say that it was such a prevalent hold on the country intellectually and philosophically that I think that even in Prabhupada's time there was kind of the residue of like we can't go back there. You know what I mean? Because because it's compelling, because we're compassionate, but because also historically it had such a strong hold on the intelligentsia of our country that we don't want to see, and therefore the whole Vedic paradigm, that we don't want to see a slide backwards. I understand, like, I'm not really up on the modern ISKCON times, but my understanding is that this is a concern of the last generation of Prabhupada's disciples to our generation, is that we may lose the fervor, exactly like what you're saying, um, uh, which is like, what's the big deal? Why can't we just, what's so bad about impersonalism? But those are some of the reasons why we have to be careful.
Thank you, Venu Madhuri. We see Madame Gopal Prabhu is here, and we see Gail is raising her hand. I think, Venu Madhuri, you can handle her question. With Madame Gopal Prabhu present, you can handle Gail's
Yeah,
question.
with my Gurudev present, I can handle anything. Okay, Gail Mataji, please fire away.
Hare Krishna, Venu Madhuri. As expected, your classes are, not to be missed. and I'm so happy that you're the one who spoke on this subject that always fascinates me. Comparing the various sampradayas. You know, So I took screenshots of every slide. So that I
I'll
can.
just email them to you, my dear
Thank
sister.
you, thank you. It was just, it was just dreamy getting such details on a subject matter that's so really fascinating to me. And I mean, I've been trying to get it for years, and I will still be trying to get it past today. But this was a great comprehensive presentation. Yeah, I actually had more of a comment than a
Yeah.
qualified comment than a question. In response to Ananda Bihari Prabhu's question, what immediately came to mind for me, why do we push back on impersonalism, is that question made me think of the fact, or made me think of the comparison between the various types of happiness, the happiness of material life, if you want to call it that, because we all know that it's actually suffering. The comparison of that to the happiness of impersonalism, and the happiness of impersonalism compared to the happiness of devotional service. So, the happiness of impersonalism, there is no comparison between that and material sense gratification, because what's the comparison between happiness and suffering? The impersonalism, the happiness of impersonalism completely blows material happiness out the water. It's like inconceivable
Yeah.
compared to the happiness that we know. But the happiness of serving, trying to make Krishna happy, that blows the happiness of impersonalism out the water.
Yeah.
And if you don't if you don't have two people or more, then there's no question of experiencing
Yeah.
the happiness of devotional service. So,
You have to have two.
and then, and so to um, not push back on impersonalism is to deny everybody the the most inconceivable level of happiness that exists.
Yes.
So that was my thought there.
Yeah, that's very beautiful. And, I think for the impersonalists, the solution to suffering is detachment, right?
Hmm.
And
Yes.
the great, revolutionary concept that Ramanujacharya introduces is that our highest bliss is contemplating God and serving God. And he talks about, just, singing God's praises, and that we can achieve this eternally through surrender and through devotion. Um, and so these fundamental concepts come from Ramanujacharya. Again, they come from Krishna, but through Ramanujacharya. So, and I think then Madhvacharya kind of puts a firmer line in the sand, and he says we are never one with God. We are always eternally two. And then Lord Chaitanya takes it even further, and I didn't have time to get into it, where that devotion and that ecstasy and that of service and that the surrender um, is ongoing. This is a distinction I didn't really have time to get into, but Ramanujacharya in the Sri tradition, you surrender once and that's it. You surrender once and you're done. And because God has these great moral qualities, he's sort of compelled to accept you. So if you surrender, that's it. Krishna accepts you. Whereas in Lord Chaitanya's view, the free will of Krishna is never constrained. He can accept your surrender or not accept your surrender. And that kind of makes it a little bit more spicy. And he also further accentuates, I think, kind of the role of devotion and surrender in the mood of love, in the mood of a lover. So yeah, it kind of just takes it further and synthesizes it in a super sophisticated way.
Yeah, actually, you reminded me that I did have more of a question. I just wanted you to repeat the distinction between qualified dualism and the like absolute dualism that Madhvacharya presented. You know, the contrast between
Yeah.
Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya. What was the difference between their descriptions of like the dualism between the
Yeah.
jiva and the absolute truth?
So the qualified dualism means that so of Ramanujacharya, he says that yes, we are one with God, and that but it's qualified in the sense that meaning it's not just one soup, like after you've put it in the blender, it still has qualities. Like you are distinct, the world is real, difference
Hmm.
is real.
Hmm.
It be qualified in the sense of meaning it has qualities rather than just kind of a homogeneous, formless, nirguna soup,
Hmm.
is what he said. But
Hmm.
Ramanujacharya says we are separate from God, but we are part of Him, like his limbs, or
Hmm.
Whereas Madhvacharya makes a cut, and he says, no, we are eternally separate. We are eternally separate. We are in no way in God. We are separate from Him, but we are connected to Him, which
Like like
then Lord
physical.
Chaitanya goes on to add through the Goswamis that that is like the energy to the energetic, meaning that we're related kind of energetically to God, which is super, I think, sophisticated and beautiful. But speaking of sophisticated and beautiful, here comes darshan. So I can stay for
Thank you
that.
so much. Thank you
Okay,
very much. I mean, I need to continue, but I see that we're
give me a
about 2
call.
o'clock. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Venu Madhuri, could you unshare the screen?
Govinda, Hari Krishna, Namah Govinda, Hari Krishna, Namah Govinda, Hari Krishna, Hari Krishna, Jai Shishivada Muralidhar Lord Chandra. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can obtain pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words contained from this lotus fountain. Attachment to the lotus feet is perfection of the pure desire. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with happiness. He gives my Lord birth after from him ecstatic praying. My ignorance is destroyed. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, friend of the poor and the Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. May your fame be spread all over the three worlds. We take shelter at your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Temple Room. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Sharan Prabhu ki jai. Venu Madhuri, Hare Krishna, wonderful class. Very interesting subject matter. Sindri Radha is raising her hand.
Hare Krishna, Venu. That was such a great class. I understand things that I have not understood before. Just a few points that I guess I'm really happy I was able to understand. So it's really how blessed we are that we have Lord Chaitanya, right? Because I guess from the scriptures, we know that he is an incarnation of Krishna himself. So therefore, by him saying from these different lineages, or sampradayas, excuse me, we know, okay, what this one said, this is what you should take out of that. Everything else that's not in alignment with what we believe. So if, right, is that what, so basically just like from Ramanujacharya, like just there's a few things with the bhakti yoga is the way, and but I assume there's other things that they do preach that we don't align with.
Yeah, there are. And for example, like Ramanujacharya says that there are gradations of souls or jivas, and that essentially some souls are kind of eternally damned and will never reconnect with Krishna. So we don't take that, for example, in our thinking. So yeah, there are definitely some things from Ramanujacharya and other acharyas that we don't take. But yeah, I think what Jiva Goswami is relaying that from Lord Chaitanya is that these are sort of the essences. These are the essential things that we're taking. Prabhupada says that we should read the acharyas from all four lineages, but he tends to emphasize the things that we have in common. He doesn't sort of set up battles with the other sampradayas, but again, he does encourage us to read their commentaries and understand their thinking. And again, it is helpful because it helps you kind of understand your own lineage better.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Nice to see you. Sadhvi?
Hare Krishna, and thank you very much for today. Um, what in whatever Prabhupada has said, that's what how I started my whole spiritual path when I got the Bhagavad Gita, and in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada mentioned some books, and I always did my best to buy that books, to find that book and buy it and read it also. So when even in Srimad Bhagavatam later on, I learned many other books that he has mentioned. Even he mentioned even different Puranas, different Upanishad, and so on and so on. So if if he mentioned them, is it wrong for me to read them, even though that is not, they are not, how to say, we don't need to read them, but only read the Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question because I have that question too sometimes because Prabhupada says two different things. One thing he says is just read my books, essentially, meaning like you just stick to my books, you don't need anything else. And I think that's true. I think we can get everything we need from his books. And I think that he was probably saying that at the time, that his disciples may have been like wandering around and kind of looking at other stuff and getting confused and distracted. And he's probably just like, just focus on what I'm telling you. But he's obviously, what he's quoting when you say the Puranas, those are the kind of the kind of context for that. Like everything is coming, like those are part of the great vast Vedic literature. And he's citing lots of literature. And I think we shouldn't be confused. The literature itself is out there, meaning, the Vedic literature is out there. It gets read and interpreted by various thinkers, and even the translation puts color into it. But in some ways, if you're just reading just a straight translation, I mean, there's no such thing as an exactly straight translation, but if you're reading just a straight translation of, say, the Brahma Samhita or something, I think Prabhupada, I think, would want us to read those things, so that you can have a greater understanding. So I think what he didn't want was for us to be wandering down into other sampradayas or other teachers, or Buddhism, or all these other things that are going to kind of lead us astray. So he kind of says two things, but that's how I interpret it. I think his books are enough, but if you have the time and inclination, it certainly helps you understand if you can go back to the sources.
For my for my sanity, I'm an old woman and I always want to know the reason why. And that's why when I read the Purana, which he has mentioned it, not that I'm going
Yeah,
to find someone, but every book I have read, he has mentioned it. So I did it because he
that's
has mentioned
great.
it. So for me, is almost not almost. Is feel that it gives the how to say the reason to everything. You know what I mean? Why? Where it's coming from? That's why as soon as he mentioned name, I go and read, and that is my reason. Not because I want to
Yeah,
be anyone else than what I'm
yeah.
reading now. You
I
know.
think you're embodying that kind of the balance between religion and philosophy that Prabhupada in my first slide, that Prabhupada wants us to have. Exactly, that you're going out and finding the sources because they provide the context to what Prabhupada's saying, but you're not going out willy-nilly and just looking at anything. You're looking at the things that he cites. So I think that's probably that's a good, safe way to kind of stay in the boundaries and always be connecting it back to what Prabhupada says. Yeah, thank you. That's great. Maternath.
Thank you very much, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo, thank you so much for class,
Mhm.
breaking down tattva. Something you said is Lord Chaitanya may or may not accept our surrender. Um, can you clarify that? What you're
Yeah, and it wasn't Lord Chaitanya, it was more Krishna. Um, as I understand it, maybe I'll call in my dear Gurudev here and phone a friend. But the way that I understand it, reading the comparison in the Sri conception, right? You surrender, and it's kind of like a one and done, not to be trite, but it's like a one and done, and Krishna is compelled to accept your surrender. As I understand it, in our tradition, Krishna is not compelled to do anything in this regard. I think if your devotion, if your devotion is pure, like then he is bound. But up until that point, unless it's pure devotion like that, it's really his mercy. It's his choice. And mercy is not guaranteed. Mercy is merciful, right? It comes and goes at Krishna's will, is kind of how I understand the distinction there.
Yeah, my understanding is um, Krishna accepts us like 100% wherever we're at, who we are, and the mercy is there. But the question is, are we taking the mercy?
Yeah, that's a nicer way of putting it. Yeah.
Because so much of the time, and Krishna like absolutely loves us. He has a lot of time where we're thinking, well, he has praying for like the residents of Vrindavan and the gopis and the gopas. Actually, he has praying for us. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says our heart is like iron. It's hard. So we're not able to let that mercy in. So it's a matter of, are we accepting the mercy? And what we do is we usually try to, I need to, I need to achieve the mercy. I need to work and so we're trying to get the mercy, but the mercy's already there. It's a matter. So it changes the relationship. And
Okay. Yeah. My apologies.
yeah, it's a subtle thing, but I think it really has an impact on how we relate to Krishna.
It's super. It's really, sorry to interrupt. I got excited. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a really beautiful kind of turning to understand that the mercy and the love are always there. I think, as Gary Govardhan says, the game is always on from Krishna's side. Like, I
Yeah.
like the way he says that, right? It's just, can we access it? I think that the subtlety, and again, I'm getting out of my pay grade here, is that in that at those higher stages of prema, Krishna comes and goes for a while, right? Like even with the gopis, right? He comes and he
Yeah.
goes. He withdraws himself. And I think it's that kind of play, really, and Leela version of kind of withdrawing himself and withdrawing his mercy, that, as I understand it, doesn't have a counterpart in the Sri lineage. It's sort of like you receive Krishna's mercy, and then that's it. You surrender, and that's it. And then you're in, and he's compelled, and that's kind of like, it's almost like judicial. They use that word a lot. Like, the Lord Chaitanya doesn't view it as like a judicial arrangement. But nonetheless, I really like the distinction that you just made, that, Krishna is not withholding his mercy from us. He loves us. It's just, are we ready to accept it?
Yeah. Yeah. And are we ready to let it to also let it like soften our heart and melt the heart? Because a lot of time we think I have to
Right. I got
soften my heart, and it's Krishna that does it. He's as soon as we think I'm going to do this, I'm going to achieve this, then it's the false ego getting bigger.
so beautiful. It's so beautifully
I'm speaking to myself too, because I need to hear
Yeah,
this like every day. I so
it
need to hear
is.
this, because I've made the mistake of trying to achieve and get the mercy, and the ego's so subtle. It wants the credit. It wants to say, look what I've done, even if it's, look, I've advanced spiritually. So
Right.
yeah.
I'm ready. I've made myself ready. Like, I've softened my heart. Yeah. Yeah, now that with the privilege of the floor, Maternath, I just want to say I always appreciate your comments and reflections and questions, really profound and always help shift my consciousness. And so, glories to you.
No.
Very much.
So, Krishna's mercy. Harifal, thank you.
Gail.
Hey, Krishna. Yeah, just to follow up on this conversation, it also struck me when you were saying that in Ramanujacharya's line, Krishna, once a person surrenders, is a one and done, and he's come, I got my mind got snagged by the word compelled. He's like kind of compelled to just accept us once we surrender once, whereas Lord Chaitanya, like, it's not like that. So since we're talking about really the same person, how is there this contrast, and how is it possible that God can be compelled under any circumstances?
Well, we see, I was starting to say this to Matranath, is a really good question, that we see that, Krishna is compelled by the love of Mother Yashoda, right? He's bound by her love even.
Mm-hmm.
He can be compelled by the pure love of a devotee. He can be. But I think in the Sri conception that it's more that because God has these sort of innate qualities of compassion, that it's just more broadly extended, that he's compelled in that sense, like not compelled like he has to, but because he has such great compassion, that anybody who surrenders,
But
receives
I don't know.
receives
But
this.
Lord
Yeah.
Chaitanya, he's the one who is famous for having the most compassion. No?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, he gave love of God to everybody, Again, and I think what we're talking about is not the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, but the mercy of Krishna. And if that's a distinction that is that is possible to make. Um, Gail, does that make any sense?
I'm trying, honey. I'm
Yeah,
trying.
yeah. I'm with you. I found this difficult too. I don't know.
Maybe I can
Yeah, I was
clarify a
gonna
little
say,
bit here.
Gurudev, please help us.
So it's really we have to understand that it's a subtle difference in the way this two sampradayas are structured, right? So in the Sri Sampradaya, Sharanagati, they often use the word prapatti in their tradition. So what it is a formal, decisive act of surrender. That itself becomes a direct means of liberation. So it's a formal act. They have like an initiation of sorts, right? That itself is enough. It is structured. It's like a legal covenant type of agreement in tone. And like you said, it's a one time and done. So what happens here is if you perform that properly, they say the soul is guaranteed moksha by the Lord's vow. The Lord has taken vow. Anybody does this form of surrender, you'll get moksha. In our Gaudiya ISKCON tradition, Sharanagati, it's the same word, but it's an ongoing, it's a deepening internal posture. It's not an external kind of thing, right? It's an internal posture of dependence that we matures throughout our practice, especially with nam bhajan, with chanting and all that. So it is relational, it's based on relationship, it's ongoing, it intensifies over time. And rather than replacing sadhana, Sharanagati infuses sadhana with humility, that sort of thing, and trust, right? So in both traditions, we have the same 6 limbs, anukulyasa, sankalpa, pratikulyasa, varjanam. All of them are the same 6 limbs are there, right? But they apply them slightly differently, right? For example, rakshati vishwasa, like certainly Krishna will protect me. So now in the Sri Sampradaya, that is seen as absolute assurance of protection. Whereas in Gaudiya Sampradaya, that particular element grows as we experience it. The trust grows. It's not 1 or 0. It actually grows with intensity with time. You see, Goptrita Varna, that formal acceptance that Vishnu is my protector or Vishnu is my maintainer. Whereas in Gaudiya, it's more like an emotional dependence on Krishna. It's slightly different. It's a lot more emotional humility, emotional helplessness that's there. Now, the key difference here, okay, and this we saw when I think Venu Madhuri Mataji also visited that temple with us. I remember that. Okay, and we talked with there, and he was really emphasizing. He said Sharanagati versus Bhakti. If you remember that conversation, it was very interesting. We have first-hand experience of this, so we're speaking from it, right? So basically, in Sri Sampradaya, Sharanagati can replace other spiritual practices. You don't even have to chant. You just do that Sharanagati step, and it's particularly emphasized for those who can't do sadhana. It's a standalone path. The mood is this: I can't do anything. Krishna, you must save me. I place myself in your hands. I can't do anything. I can't even chant. Okay, that's their their angle. With Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Sharanagati empowers the bhakti process. It's the gateway of the bhakti process. It deepens chanting. It deepens our hearing. It deepens our service. Sharanagati is a hard condition of advanced devotion. In other words, the mood is this: I'm trying to serve you, knowing fully that without your mercy, I will certainly fail. It's slightly different. You actually have to do stuff in the Gaudiya line. See, so basically in Gaudiya way, saying Sharanagati is the soil in which bhakti grows. See, so you still have to do the cultivation. Now, the goals are also different. Sri Sampradaya, the goal is moksha in Vaikuntha. You get to Vaikuntha, you're done. You get to do reverent worship, majestic service, Aishwarya. It secures the freedom from samsara. In Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the goal is not liberation. It's prema bhakti, prem, love. And that's why in our bhajans we say that Varam Deva Moksha, na moksha. I don't want moksha. It's very odd for someone else to hear that. So Gaudiyas, that's us, our relationship is intimate love, not the reverent Aishwarya Bhava, servant, friend, parent, lover, and so on. And Sharanagati melts into this helpless love, not just kind of safety or security from samsara. So in Gaudiya line, liberation is not our problem. Forgetting Krishna is our problem. That's we don't care about liberation. So those are subtle differences.
Yes. So when you mentioned the fact that after this formal initiation in the Sri Sampradaya, they get moksha. The moksha that you're referring to is they get to take up residence in Vaikuntha.
Correct.
Uh-huh. Okay.
It's pretty intense. The initiation involves branding with white hot iron brands onto your body with the symbols of Vishnu. They burn it onto your body.
Just in case you thought it was easier, Gail.
No. Not looking for easier, just wanting to get the difference. Yeah. One and done.
Thank you for that explanation, Gurudev. It was very helpful.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Both of you, thank you.
Any other questions? Ananda Bihari, are you still with us?
I'm here. Thank you very much. Madam Gopal Prabhu, thank you for clarifying everything so nicely for us. I don't think we should speak after that. Madam Gopal Prabhu, thank you. Thank you for you and for your disciples, Venu Madhuri, Whiskey Das, Robert. Yeah. Okay, we are ready for the junior choir. Isaiah, Annabelle, Sage, and Sky, please.
Did you turn the volume down?
Yes. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama Rama. Hare Hare.
Thank you very much for being in our Sampradaya. Sage, Sky, Annabelle, and Isaiah, Venu Madhuri. Everybody on this call, we love you and we need you. Yes, Ram, yes. Have a wonderful day. Stay warm. Sadhana infused with devotion. That's my takeaway. Thank you, Madam Gopal Prabhu. Thank you, Venu Madhuri again. Hare Krishna. Ram, say Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Ram.
Okay, Hare Krishna.